How does energy move through an ecosystem? So remember, our ecosystem includes both living and non-living things. Living things require energy. That's one of the characteristics of life. So energy has to be captured somehow. Most of the energy from the earth comes from the sun. So that energy is captured by the process of photosynthesis in plants. So plants are taking that sunlight and they're using it to convert water and carbon dioxide into sugar and oxygen. So plants use that energy from the sun to make sugar. And when sugar gets broken down, that's how we get energy. Some living things are herbivores. That is, they eat plants, herbs, plants. So these living things get that energy from plants, and their digestive tracts are equipped with getting the energy from a plant. So their primary diet is plants, and that's what they eat. So they're sometimes referred to as the primary consumer because they're consuming plants, and plants are getting their energy from the sun. But then other things, carnivores, will eat those and get the energy from those primary consumers. We call this a food chain. And what it's doing is showing the energy transfer from the sun to plants to the living things that eat plants, then to those living things that eat the herbivores. So this is a food chain, and it's just showing this transfer of energy. So plants are producers because they're producing the energy. Then we have the consumers. Herbivores eat the plants. Carnivores eat the herbivores. So at each spot along the way, energy gets passed from one living thing to the next. So we start with the producers, and then we have herbivores, then we have carnivores. Carnivores eat meat. Well, there are a few other players in this food chain. Omnivores can eat both plants and other animals, whereas decomposers are going to get their energy by breaking down dead things. So as leaves fall and die, or as living things die, the decomposers will break those things down, and that's how they get their food. Each step along the way of this food chain, we call that a trophic level. Trophic has to do with eating or energy. So the bottom level are the producers. They're getting their energy from the sun. Then we have the herbivores. They're the things that are eating plants, the primary consumers. Then we have the carnivores and the omnivores that are getting that energy. Now, if you look carefully at this diagram, you'll notice that the bottom block with the producers is a large block, and then it gradually gets smaller as you go from one level to the next. That's because energy is lost along the way. We call this the 10% rule. That is, that 90% of the energy is lost to heat. Only 10% is transferred to the next level. So if there are 1,000 units of energy made by the producers, then the herbivores are only going to get 100 units of energy. The carnivores are only going to get 10 units of energy. So the energy gradually decreases as it goes. Now, this means that the herbivores have to eat a lot of producers. They have to eat a lot of plants in order to get enough energy to survive. It also means that the population of carnivores is generally small relative to the population of herbivores, relative to the amount of plant material that's at the base of the food chain, because so much energy is lost along the way. It's called the 10% rule. Only 10% of the energy goes from one level to the next. So this bottom level are the primary producers. Then you have the primary consumers. So they're the ones that are eating the plant life. Then you have the second level or third level or fourth level. Sometimes it's referred to as secondary, tertiary, quaternary consumers. And then at the very top are the apex predators. They're the ones that have to eat the most because there's so much energy lost at each level of that pyramid. Well, a food chain is one way to look at how energy moves through a ecosystem. However, it's a kind of simplistic view because the carnivore might not only eat mice, it might also eat squirrels. And the herbivore might not just eat one type of plant, it might eat several types. So we have some overlap. This is called a food web. In the food web, the arrows are showing the direction that the energy is traveling. So the mouse eats some plants, it might eat an acorn, it might nibble on the tree. All of the energy from those food sources are going into the mouse. The mouse could be eaten by the cat, or it might be eaten by a hawk or by a snake. There's other things. The cat might not just eat mice, it might also eat an occasional bird. So both the energy from the bird and the mouse are going into the cat, which is one of the top consumers in this food web. Here's another example of a food web. You can see the interactions between these different living things and where that energy is going. But understand that they are related. For example, if someone were to spray a pesticide to kill the grasshoppers because the grasshoppers are irritating them, and they spray this pesticide and kill the grasshoppers, can you notice that with the grasshoppers gone, there's not going to be as many things eating the grains and grasses. So the amount of grains and grasses might increase. However, the birds are going to be losing a major food source. So are the owls. As a result, the bird population or owl population might diminish because there's not enough grasshoppers around to eat. So notice how these things are interconnected and interrelated. That's how energy moves through an ecosystem. Think of it in terms of food chains or food webs.